Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go up to all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, September 4th, 2024, and this is How the Frack We Got here. I'm your host, the most Will, and on the Frack We Got here, we do take the events of the week and try and make some sense out of it all. Before we get started, guys, we do pride ourselves on being a news podcast. What does that basically mean? That basically means that we do our best, do the best research that we can to the most reputable sites with award-winning journalism. We do not do sensational news like Fox News, Newsmax, The Blaze, whatever extreme left or extreme right sites are out there. We simply don't do it. At the same time, guys, we do try to watch our language because words do fly, especially with the given situation that's happening right now. At the same time, guys, maybe things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, there's no other way we can start this show, guys, but to address the elephant in the room. We've had another school shooting.
Horror in Winder, Georgia, after officials say a suspected shooter opened fire in Appalachia High School.
There's a 14-year-old student here at the high school. Again, he has been taken into custody. He will be charged with murder, and he will be tried as an adult.
This video capturing terrifying moments after gunfire rang out. Police say deputies and emergency medical personnel rushed to the high school at about 10:23 a.m. in response to an active shooting. The school put on lockdown.
It was just like a loud boom.
Authorities say the gunfire left 4 dead, 2 teachers and 2 students, and 9 injured.
Our school resource officer engaged him, and the shooter quickly realized that if he did not give up, that it would end with an OIS, or an officer-involved shooting. He gave up, got on the ground, and the deputy took him into custody.
Golf coach David Phoenix was shot twice and is alive, according to his daughter, who posted on Facebook that he's in stable condition.
My heart hurts for these kids. My heart hurts for our community, but I want to make it very clear that hate will not prevail in this county. Love will prevail over what happened today.
Students returned back to school in August, sophomores describing the terrifying moments.
I didn't know what was going to happen because you could hear the gunfires right down the hall. So I was shaking, scared.
I thought I was going to die.
Student Itzel Navarrete says she was shaken up and scared.
How does it feel that this happened at your high school? I'm shocked. I'm shocked something like this could happen here.
Panicked parents rushed to the school, later reuniting with their children at the football field.
My daughter called me at work, screaming that there was a shooter at Appalachia.
President Biden briefed today, writing, "Jill and I are mourning the deaths of those whose lives were cut short due to more senseless gun violence." Former President Trump posting, "These cherished children were taken from us far too soon by a sick and deranged monster." At a rally in New Hampshire, Vice President Harris remarking,
"It's senseless. It is. We've got to stop it. And we have to end this epidemic of gun violence in our country once and for all."
And Priya, have investigators reached out to the suspect's family yet?
That's right, Lester. Authorities have spoken to the suspect's family, but they say the investigation is ongoing. School here is closed for the rest of the week. The community is gathering tonight for a vigil to mourn the victims.
So there's no other way to say this, guys. This was another school shooting that did happen at Appalachia High School in Georgia. Again, a 14-year-old shooter. The name was given out. No picture identification as of yet because he is a minor, because the parents had to be notified before anybody else. But we find ourselves right back where we started. And I say right back where we started, guys, just because how many times have we sat there and had this same discussion? Really? I mean, right now, let's see, 2024, this is now the second school shooting of the year. I want to say from remembering right, January 4th, there was in Iowa, there was a school shooting there. So in the year of 2024, we've already had a couple of school shootings. And at the same time, that's the second one this year. And I feel like we're having the same conversation all over again. And I hate to say it, we kind of are. The reason why, because school shooting happens, parents are asking what could have been done. How was the shooter able to get a weapon inside campus? I thought we had metal detectors. I thought we had school resource officers. And eventually, it gets down to the road. Even more information is coming out as this story is developing, especially that CNN just reported this about 30 minutes ago, where they said that there may have been an issue where this very same said student was considered a red flag a while back. And because of the lack of sufficient evidence, nothing could have been done at the time. So you are going to have a lot of parents really asking questions as to what more could have been done. But that doesn't even get to the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is always going to be the gun issue. Now, again, every time I bring up gun control, you hear the ammosexuals, and I call them ammosexuals, the ones that are just a little bit too obsessed with firearms. I'm a firearms owner too, but not to the level of these individuals. The point I'm getting at is whenever gun control comes up, these extreme Second Amendment people, these extreme homosexuals will always sit there and say laws don't work. And they'll always go to the oldie but the favorite, criminals don't follow laws. Well, here's the problem with that. Your criminals are now children and sometimes very deranged individuals by today's standards can still get firearms, or their parents have firearms, or dare I say their parents may have actually trained these children on how to use firearms. However, not to speculate, but that usually is the situation with a lot of these individuals now, especially in terms of school shootings. And again, we can sit there and blame the schools. Why aren't there metal detectors at these schools? Why hasn't, we have more resource officers? It's amazing to me, for the simple fact of the matter, that yes, the blame game is going to happen. But I love that, and again, you're going to have President Biden, and of course, is going to give his sorrows and prayers. And of course, you're going to see Madam Vice President, Democratic nominee Kamala Harris give hers. And of course, you're going to hear from Dorito because someone probably told him to. The thing I'm getting at is the only way that we stop school shootings is that we have to address the ugly elephant in the room. What do I mean by that? I mean by the fact that America has to admit we have a gun problem. And the gun problem is not the fact that guns are being made. It's the fact that guns are still too accessible. I mean, just now, not too long ago, there was the parents of the one school shooter who didn't have an issue with guns around their children. That very same child decided to shoot up a school. Those parents are now being charged for it as accomplices. Will the same thing happen for this child coming out of Georgia? Maybe. Don't know. But that's just a point. That the red flag laws or, things that are seen in these schools, because let's be honest, we're not sure. I'm not trying to give any sympathy for the shooter whatsoever. But at the same time, if someone had done a report on this thing and said, report on this kid and said, hey, something about him needs to be checked. And I always say, what could have been done more? Maybe that could have been stopped. Maybe he could have been watched for gotten the help he needs. Maybe he could have been removed from that facility altogether. It's a whole lot of maybes, but because there was no empowerment to act beyond what's the current laws at the time, it's a what if. But what isn't a what if is, and I hate to say it, the cycle of gun control and how it's handled in this country will continue. You will have a school shooting. You'll have people outraged. You will have some politicians talk about gun laws or gun control. You will have the idea of universal background checks being brought up. You will have the idea of red flag laws. You will have, possible psychiatric screening, which again, I'm not against, because in Japan, and I love using Japan as the example of how gun laws are done. Japan, you have to certify every year. You have to pay for a class every year. You have to have a physical and mental evaluation every year. At the same time, you have to do all these things. Otherwise, you cannot own firearms. And the penalties there are very, very strict for having a firearm without regulation or approval. Now, a lot of people are going to sit there and say, well, the right to bear arms should not be infringed upon. Here's the problem every time the Second Amendment gets used. The Second Amendment was only put in place because the Founding Fathers wanted to make sure that, hey, the government that we build, we don't want it to be the same government, the same dictatorship that we just left. So we want to empower the local citizens and even form local militias in the event of a tyrannical government. Now, somehow between that and what we have now, it's completely different. Do you want to own? Should you have the right to bear firearms? Absolutely. But there is a major responsibility to that type of product. There is. And even more so, we should be regulating. We should be doing more. And the whole criminals don't follow laws thing is bullshit. I don't mean to cuss this early into the podcast, but it's bullshit. Criminals don't follow laws. Well, criminals are not the criminals that the NRA and Fox News would have you believe. Now it's kids that have access to weapons. It's individuals that have access to weapons that they shouldn't have. And I'm just saying and I hate to say it, but since Sandy Hook happened, I'm just wondering how tolerant are we becoming of these school shootings to the point to where I fear we hopefully don't get desensitized by them. I fear we don't. But at the same time, I feel like what's going to happen out of this is going to be differently. Because, again, it's a whole cycle. Outrage, what can be done, vigils, congressional hearings, lobbyists throw money at it, story goes away, everybody goes back to normal. I hope that's not the case, but we'll see. As more information comes out, we definitely will report on that. But switching gears for a second, guys, I want to talk about this next one because, again, I never thought from the Supreme Court, and I love the fact that there is one voice out there, because we talk about the Supreme Court. We talked about a few months ago Biden wanting to put term limits as well as an ethical board that the Supreme Court has to answer to. Why? Because we cannot trust people with lifetime signings, and you're the highest court in the land, and the decisions that you come up with can affect our society as we know it. We cannot expect you to be infallible. You're human. At the same time, you can be purchased. But Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson said it best when someone asked her, do you believe that the Supreme Court needs an ethical review board?
A binding code of ethics is pretty standard for judges. And so I guess the question is the Supreme Court any different? And I guess I have not seen a persuasive reason as to why the court is different than the other courts.
Are you considering supporting an enforcement mechanism?
I am considering supporting it as a general matter. I'm not going to get into commenting on particular policy proposals, but from my perspective, I don't have any problem with an enforceable code.
And the fact that she sat there and said it, I have no problem with an enforced code. Now, keep in mind, it gets weird because and if you've been following this podcast, we've been saying it about how weird it is that Justice Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, two of the Supreme Court justices that have basically been under the spotlight, reason being because, well, you've had Republican donors basically buy and purchase things for you that are questionable, like vacations, taking their private planes, buying relatives' homes, paying for children's private school tuition, paying for $100,000 plate dinners in your name. It's a little questionable. At the same time, these two same Supreme Court justices believe they've done nothing wrong. Whereas for the rest of us, you're in a position to where you can enforce or you can reject favor for someone. And if someone is dead, I'm sorry, I wish I had billionaire friends that would pay my things for me and expect nothing in return. I'm sorry. Where does that altruism friendship reside? I would love to be there. But in reality, Clarence Thomas is compromised. Samuel Alito is compromised. No word on Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, even Sotomayor, even Johnny Brown Jackson. I hate to say it. I'm not just trying to point this at conservative Supreme Court justices. They just seem to be the only ones that, well, have questionable purchases. But these are the same Supreme Court justices that are sitting there saying, trust us. We are not compromising ourselves in the letter of the law. Trust us. It's a little hard to, because in every form of check and balance, and I said this all the time, the Supreme Court is the only part of the government that does not have an answer to. They don't answer anybody. So say, for instance, if Clarence Thomas, if you look back and saw, it's like, oh, why is it that, this Republican billionaire paid for everything and you never reported it? Oh, well, I didn't think that was important. Without nobody to answer to, where's his punishment? This man can still sit on cases that may affect Republican billionaires or affect those that have paid his way, and he will not recuse himself. But yet he will not see that as a conflict of interest. So again, I love the fact that what President Biden is trying to do. He is trying to get term limits. I think term limits for a Supreme Court should be the same as a presidency. I actually think term limits should be set on every area. I think term limits need to be on the Senate as well as the House of Representatives, and not just the executive branch. And the Supreme Court should follow suit as well. 2 consecutive terms and you're out. Because again, I think there needs to be this level of you're only here for a short time, not a long time. So get what you need done before your time runs out. And that needs to be a standing thing for all branches of government. But could Johnny Brown Jackson come out and saying that she's completely okay with it? I mean, really, I would be really curious to see on whether or not others will go for it. I mean, I don't expect Kavanaugh or Barrett or Thomas or Alito or even the lead Supreme Court justice. I don't expect any of them to say anything about this. But I do expect the progressives because it makes sense. But we'll see. But moving right along, guys, I want to cover the story as well because Trump is trying to, again, he's trying to move the goal lines. The reason being, guys, is because, well, remember that hush money case that Trump was found guilty of because he paid a porn star while he was messing with her, although he was with the porn star at the time of his wife being pregnant, and yet tried to hide it in campaign funds, lied about it, tried to get his fixer to do about it, and then 4 years later we're still talking about it because, again, it's hush money. Well, here's the thing: he's trying to get that court case moved. Why? Well, because he's in election season. He's in election season, so everything's got to be moved. All of his court cases. This convicted felon is trying to move the goalpost because he, quote unquote, cannot go to trial at the same time run for his campaign. And I have been saying this the entire time, guys, for all those that don't care or don't understand. Trump's not doing this to save us, or as his MAGA people would like to believe. He's in it to save himself. The man's already facing a Manhattan judgment on mortgage fraud, which he's found guilty of. He's found guilty of sexual assault, which he's trying to get that expunged. He's guilty of his hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. He's guilty of that too. He still has his election interference case in Georgia, where DA Fani Willis is chomping at the bit to get that case started. This is the same DA that his team tried to get removed or tried to slander, and it didn't work. And let's not forget, the FBI still wants him for that warehouse full of documents, although it was really a storage container, but they still want him for that. And of course, the special counsel there, Jack Smith, has now actually reissued those charges to make sure that the Supreme Court's ruling about the president being, getting immunity for certain acts will not apply there. Case in point, Dorito is trying to push the goalpost back because he's trying to avoid jail. And trust and believe, the fact that he still has friends, court-appointed judges, and the Supreme Court still out there, which he loves to invoke like it's a secret word or something at Pee Wee's Playhouse. he still can do that because those people are still in place and they will still move the goalposts forward. They'll still move the goalposts because they still believe that he can still become president. And yeah, there's still a snowball chance in hell that he might become president. But understand, if he does, it changes everything. Because again, a president can't be indicted. At least that's the opinion of some people, although it really isn't. But the point I'm getting at is he's pushing the goalpost back because he's trying to clear his way to still do his route. And it could possibly work. Because I know if anybody else, for that matter, they already be under the jail. But again, we will see, since the judge in that case has already rejected it. You know, Trump and his lawyers who are probably much Trump at this point. If you're a lawyer for Trump, you've put your great grandkids through college by now. That's how many hours he's billed. Like I said, if you're a lawyer for Trump, you definitely have job security, because that man is fighting tooth and nail to stay out of jail. But we shall see. Personally, I'm waiting on the Simpsons prediction. Moving right along, guys, I want to cover the story as well because presidential hopeful Democratic nominee Madam Vice President Kamala Harris is unveiling a new wave of economic policies for small businesses. She wants to encourage people to go into business, even writing up close to $5,000 to $10,000 of business expenses off to entice those to hang their own doors. Don't get me wrong. It's a wonderful plan for small businesses because we've heard small business being talked about all the time, guys. You've heard it from several different presidential hopefuls. You've heard it from the GOP all the time. We must, help out the small businesses, although they help out corporations. But nothing is really ever done for small businesses since the Trump tax laws went into place, which basically gutted the middle class and gave the top tax breaks to the top 1% and Wall Street. So now I like the fact that, again, Madam Vice President is trying to sit there and say, along with her new homeowners plan she's putting forward, she's trying to get small business back on track. Because let's be honest, these days, everybody wants to start a business or start a small business or be your own boss, but cost, inflation, everything else comes up. So I do like the fact that she is trying to hit her policies on all places. It's very progressive, very demure. I know, I just had to try that out once. But it'll be interesting to see what she goes through. And, because again, with the debate coming up between her and Trump this Tuesday, it'll be interesting. I've said before, Trump doesn't debate. Don't believe me? Look up Hillary versus him, where Hillary dang near wiped the floor with him and called everything this man would do. And yet at the same time, she wasn't wrong at all. I expect Madam Vice President to do the same doggone thing with a smile on her face. But we'll see come next Tuesday. That being said, guys, I got to cover this story because, again, it amazes me. And I don't mean to insult everybody, but the attention span of America sometimes amazes me, but at the same time frightens me. Why? Because people will call something check fraud and call it a glitch, but still will share it for others to do. And just like lemmings, they all jump off the bridge.
The new viral TikTok trend that some users are calling a money glitch or free money hack, it's actually having some serious consequences. Here's what it is. It involves people depositing fraudulent checks into their Chase bank accounts and withdrawing the money before it's flagged. Well, that's actually fraud. For more on this and how it started online, let's bring in NBC News culture and trends reporter Callan Rosenbach. Callan, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you. So how did something that is actually fraud turn into this trend or something viral? When did this glitch start getting all these views?
Good morning, Savannah. So at the end of August, so just a few days ago, people began saying that they had found a quote unquote loophole at Chase banks where they were depositing checks basically in their own name, depositing it into their own accounts. And these were checks for, astronomical amounts, $30,000, $40,000. And they were saying that, Chase will basically front that money while they wait for the check to clear. And so people were withdrawing the money from these fraudulent checks, and they called it a money glitch. What they didn't realize is that they were going to have to pay that money back when the check inevitably bounced. And so it wasn't a money glitch. This is actually check fraud. And Chase actually released a statement saying, please don't do this. This is not a glitch. This is a fraud. And they're aware of the situation and they're trying to handle it to the best of their abilities.
What are the consequences for someone who does something like this?
Well, they're going to be, if they don't find themselves in legal trouble and find themselves, facing a case with Chase in the court of law, they're going to be on the hook for a lot of money. In some cases, which we haven't verified whether they're legitimate or not, but some cases people have claimed that they owe $10,000, $30,000, and they're going to owe all this money back to Chase. So there's one, the aspect of committing check fraud, which is going to be obviously a criminal offense. But then there's the other aspect of this, which is you're now going to owe all this money that you reportedly deposited into your account and that you don't have to cover.
Callan, I know in addition to this becoming this trend, this whole glitch thing kind of getting some views online, there's also a big pile on to set the record straight in this particular instance, right?
Yes, there is. On TikTok, there are many videos in which people are saying, this is not a loophole. This is a crime. And, there's a lot of people saying like, please don't do this. This is fraud. I think a lot of people were just unaware, or maybe it's younger people who are, just getting their first bank accounts, who are just sort of learning how to spend and save money, who thought, oh, this is a way to get fast cash. And their fellow TikTokers are saying, that's not the case. This is a crime. Please don't do this.
Yeah, definitely not any type of glitch. It's just how it works as checks are being processed. Okay.
Okay. I can't believe we're going to talk about this, because this is the problem I have. The problem I have is that we are in a society of social media. We are. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's how it is. At the same time, there are things that people hop on, these trends. And here's the thing about finance, especially with banks and casinos have two things in common. Nobody ever felt good when they left a bank outside of millionaires, billionaires, and those that have won the lottery. Casinos are the same way. Your money goes in, it may not follow you on the way out. Or if you get lucky enough to win a casino, you'll be lucky to leave because they usually want you playing and spending more trying to get your money back. What I'm basically saying is, guys, between banks and casinos, the house always wins. Even more so. It's not a glitch. Some people want to call it a glitch because it's trendy. Oh, well, let me try this Chase Money glitch. Let me try this. What they basically did, for all those that don't know about check fraud. So here's what happens. These idiots who have bank accounts with Chase will write checks themselves, cash that checks themselves, because the system reviews it as a check. And of course, there's not anything in place that sits there and goes, okay, you just wrote a check to yourself for an amount. It's not like, the system won't stop it. It'll do its normal process. It reads the check, you signed it, it's in your account. Then folks will turn around, withdraw the money out, and then try to close the account. Here is the problem with these wonderful Einsteins, where people kill me with this. Oh, well, it won't come back to haunt me. The checking account is attached to your name, your social, your address. Did you think for 1 second that Chase wasn't going to get its money back? At most of these ATMs, there are video cameras that record every transaction that's ever done at that ATM. So if you're at an ATM trying to do this, guess what? You're on candid camera, which means even if you stole someone else's account, even if you basically got their check, even if you got their PIN number, things of that nature, your face can still be seen on a camera. And also, for all those that don't know, for ATMs, there's more than one camera, and it's not always in front of the ATM. Banks are not as simple-minded as people believe. At the same time, I get it, where folks who are hunting for money, we're all hurting for money. Anybody short of six figures is hurting for money right now. Inflation is still up, wages haven't gone up. I get it. But I don't care how broke I am not dumb enough, and I say dumb, And I don't feel bad for saying dumb. I'm not dumb enough to write a check to myself for the system to put a credit there, then take said money, and then think for 1 second I got to pay it back. It's stupid. At the same time, it's check fraud. Fraud's a felony. Unless you are that much of a Donald Trump super fan, you will be a felon. And trust me, being a felon does not help your chances in life. Or where a lot of people are like, well, I took it out and I never got caught. Really? How hard is it for you to get a mortgage? How hard is it for you to get a loan right now? Because trust me, those are the burdens on those, to where your financial credit life can be compromised forever. That you may never get another bank account, you may never get another credit card or a debit card or a credit card. You may never get none of these things again because you basically burned your financial file, if you will. But who in the world believes that this is a glitch? Because others see it. And of course, because others see it, it must be done. And again, the lure of cash in your hand. I get it. Money can't buy happiness. It's bullshit. Money can't buy happiness, because I have yet to see anybody who has money problems ever be that stressed out. It is still not an excuse to do check fraud. It certainly is not a glitch. Please, for the love of God, stop before you do yourself financial harm. Or at worst, owe a bank thousands and thousands upon dollars in penalties, or even to the extreme side. Some of these check frauds usually wind up with jail time. Please, oh please, I beg of you, don't be that stupid. But now we got that out of the way, moving along, there are some hotel strikes going on. And again, keep saying this, there's a very certain pattern that emerges whenever there's a hotel strike. I guarantee it's probably got to do with pay.
To the more than 10,000 workers at hotels across 9 U.S. cities on the picket lines, they say staffing levels have not recovered since the pandemic cuts. Ariel Reshef is here with more. Good morning, Ariel.
Hey, good morning to you, Michael. Hotel workers say they're still suffering from the low wages and high workloads brought on by the pandemic. They're demanding a share of record-breaking profits. On Sunday, more than 10,000 hotel workers, from desk clerks to housekeeping, walked off the job. And this morning, even more have joined the picket lines. Workers at Hyatt, Hilton, Marriott, and Omni in 9 cities are now on strike. The union that represents the hotel workers says staffing and service cuts made during the pandemic have never been restored, and that cuts to daily housekeeping and room service have caused more workers to lose income and made their jobs more difficult. The union is fighting for higher pay and benefits, and Hyatt and Hilton both say that they have contingency plans in place to minimize the impact of these strikes on their hotels. Hilton says it remains committed to negotiating in good faith to reach fair and reasonable agreements. Marriott did not respond to a request for comment. The strikes are expected to last 1 to 3 days in each city.
So let's call it what it is. Pay. It's always pay. What is it? People don't get when about strikes. Here's the thing. We are in, quote unquote, an inflation era. Yet corporations are recording and declaring profit years. Now you got to think. We're supposed to be inflation. Prices have gone up. Wages have been stagnant. Folks have to spend more and pay more to survive, to put gas in your car, to food, to daycare, to utilities, things of that nature. People have to pay more. Corporations are recording profits. Is it really inflation or is it really price gouging? Now, I've always said it best. If the corporation does have record profits, it should transition to their workers, especially in the service industry. Whenever you have hotels, you have to have people run hotels. You have people clean hotels, that run the front desk, that run the back office, that run the restaurants or any other attachments to said hotel. And it is amazing how little those people are getting when they should be getting way more. I love the fact that Hilton said, well, we have things in place. You mean you have people that you'll hire on and pay those people more? Probably pay those people the same amount that you should have paid those that are on strike. And I find it odd that Hilton always says, well, we have a backup in place for things like this. Really? You found people that will either be scabs, or you found folks that will work for you for free from temporary staffing agencies. when it's very simple. Pay your workers. You want workers to be loyal to you? Pay them. You want workers to show up? Pay them. You want workers to not look for other jobs? Pay them. Because it amazes me so with these corporations who basically got their profits off these workers, refuse or will, try to argue them down and say, well, we can't pay you this, but maybe we can do this for you in the back end. Keep in mind what the journalist just said. They took cuts in staff, cuts in hours, cuts in pay. Those workers are due big time and then some. So again, that's not the only strike, because Boeing also has a problem. Well, Boeing also has problems, but Boeing has a problem with the fact that there's a potential strike for their 32,000 workers. Again, this is the same company that has problems with keeping planes in the air, a problem with FAA sanctions, and now, again, another contract between Boeing and the International Association of Machinists is due to expire. And what's the problem? Boeing just recorded a profitable year. And what's the key word I keep on saying here, guys? Every time profits come up, the workers are like, well, where's our cut of the pie? And now Boeing has a problem. The International Association of Machinists, the ones that actually build your planes, you don't want them going on strike, especially when they sat there and said, it's the wages, it's the healthcare, it's our retirement, it's our time off. We're not getting what we should be getting. And if I'm Boeing right now, because Boeing only helps out one person, the CEO. And I hate to say that, only the CEO out of these major companies, because trust and believe, when they step down, they get a golden parachute. You see it all the time. But Boeing cannot go without its machinists, because if it does, planes halts, maintenance stops, everything stops. Boeing cannot afford to take another hit, especially with all the bad press they've been getting so far. So again, pay your workers or unionize, because there's one thing we can sit there and say, the good news that we have when the workers, things of that nature, these workers at General Motors actually did unionize for the battery plant in Tennessee, and will get a raise, a $10,000 raise because of the unionization. So it is amazing to me that, think about this for 1 second, your starting pay has been risen by $10K. At the same time, minimum, and it's like, that's all people want. Well, healthcare and things of that nature. But I have said this best. And again, I've never understood how in the world that such something very simple when it comes to strikes, that you don't want to pay your workers. Why don't you want to pay your workers? Why don't you want to pay your workers living wage? Why don't you want to make sure your workers have exceptional health care? Why don't you make sure their retirement, their 401k plans are set, their PTO, paid maternity leave, paid maternity, paid paternity leave? Why are those things so difficult to do, outside of the fact that these corporations need to admit one thing? You do not give a shit about your employees. And I'll tell you why these corporations don't give a shit about your employees. This story right here.
A Wells Fargo employee went to work the morning of Friday, August 16th and never went home. Tempe police tell 12 News 60-year-old Denise Prudhomme scanned into work at 7 o'clock in the morning. 4 days later, police responded to the office building near Washington Street and Priest Drive for reports of a subject down. Prudhomme was declared dead. The Tempe Police Criminal Investigation Bureau is investigating, but do not suspect foul play. A Wells Fargo employee exclusively spoke with 12 News, but asked not to be recorded or identified out of fear for their job. They say a colleague found Prudhomme dead at her desk in a cubicle while walking around the building on Tuesday, August 20th. Prudhomme's cubicle was reportedly on the 3rd floor and away from the main aisle. This employee says several people had smelled a foul odor, but passed it off as faulty plumbing. They say while most Wells Fargo employees at this Tempe location work remote, the building has 24/7 security, and someone should have found Prudhomme sooner. The incident left several employees feeling scared and uneasy. This employee wants to see new safety protocols in place, telling me, quote, "It's negligence in some part." A different worker also spoke with 12 News anonymously.
Was just uncomfortable.
Again, calling on the company to do more.
Body was there about 4 days before anybody found it, before anybody walked up to her and just to say hi, make sure she's okay. She was just laying on her desk.
A Wells Fargo spokesperson previously sent 12 News a statement saying, in part, "We are deeply saddened by the tragic loss of our colleague at our Tempe office," adding counselors through our employee assistance consulting service are available to support employees. An employee tells me their direct management offered those services, addressed the incident, and told workers the building was thoroughly cleaned.
So what's crazy is, and I say this all the time, I can't take credit for this. My podcasting brethren, Mayhem, or I should say Chaos Demon, if he's watching, he said it best. Take your PTO, because these companies, and this is the part that's effing scary. This employee clocked in, unfortunately passed away at her desk for 4 days. Nobody checked on her. Supposedly, the only way someone found out is that her boss was wanting something from her. Supposedly, not really hasn't been confirmed yet, but that's the allegedly. But imagine you go to work, you unfortunately pass out at your desk for 4 days. Nobody looks at you. For 4 days, nobody checks on you. For 4 days, security passes you by. For 4 days, janitorial services pass you by. Nobody blinks an eye. And yet, the stench, because let me tell you something. If you never smell the dead body, will clear that place out. A decomposing body, trust me, you never want to smell that. But the fact that people smell it was like, oh, it must be bad plumbing or raw sewage, because that's what usually, smell that bad. You think it's raw sewage, something in the waistline, something like that. But what's sad is that you could pass away at your desk and no one notices. And yeah, Wells Fargo, there needs to be heads rolling, because somebody had to see it. Somebody had to know. At the same time, employees can't come forward. Why? Because companies retaliate. They say they don't, but they do. Companies retaliate all the time. Don't believe me? Look at Amazon right now with union busting. Amazon is doing everything short of union busting, and they're using their own personnel to do it. So don't tell me companies don't retaliate. They do. At the same time, guys, again, companies do not give a shit about you. Companies see you as a number. I used to love a show called Undercover Boss, and I hear people say all the time, they see me as a number. They see me as a cog in the wheel. They see me as replaceable. They will just simply move me and put something else in place, or put a machine in place. I am not that important. And you have to look at it that way. I'm not saying go ahead and quit your job tomorrow, but I am saying don't be as diligent as you should be to a job that will not be diligent to you. Because if you're Wells Fargo, they'll leave you in your cubicle as long as you're not being non-productive. But again, it's a sad story, but also a reminder, guys, work life shouldn't be your whole life. And at the same time, guys, have somebody that cares about you, because that's the truly sad part, that woman passed away, and for almost a work week, nobody paid attention. That is sad. But what is also sad is Oregon, because for all those that don't remember about Oregon passed a law where they pretty much said all drugs are legal in some instances. Yeah, kind of taking that back.
Officially rolling back its drug decriminalization law, voters passing that measure back in 2020. But according to elected officials, parts of the state have since been plagued by overdoses and homelessness. That's why they decided to change the law. And as of this morning, possessing small amounts of hard drugs is once again a crime in that state. Michelle Wiley, public safety and health editor for Oregon Public Broadcasting, joins us now with more. Michelle, thanks for taking the time on this Sunday. Talk to us about this new law that just went into effect and what it means.
Yeah, so as of today, possession of small amounts of hard drugs, think fentanyl, methamphetamine, are again a misdemeanor crime in Oregon. Just a few days ago, that wasn't the case. This means that possession of these drugs is punishable with up to 180 days in jail. Previously, drugs in possession of small amounts of hard drugs in Oregon, the people would have been given a citation and pushed to call services. But that measure was rolled back, and it goes into effect today.
So voters approved this ballot measure 4 years ago with the idea that treatment is more effective than jail when it comes to drug addiction. So what went wrong?
Yeah, and so part of what happened, you mentioned voters passed this in 2020, is that was at the height of the pandemic. So the agencies that would have been tasked with this rollout, the health department, was very much so engulfed in working through the issues of the pandemic. So that was part of the difficulty of the rollout. The system that the state set up, this system where drug users would get citations from law enforcement and then be asked to call a phone number to get the citation waived and get access to treatment, just ended up being not very realistic. A lot of people didn't call that number, and in part because you're asking folks in the middle of addiction to make this phone call to get these services. And then, I think a lot of folks would say that the state didn't champion this law in the way that they perhaps would have wanted them to. Law enforcement were very much removed from the picture, and I think that also frustrated a lot of folks.
Interesting to see a change on one issue so quickly in one state. Michelle Wiley.
So let's think about this for a second, guys. Oregon in 2020 decides, hey, drugs, can be treated, but jail's not the answer. So we're gonna make everything legal. Wait, so marijuana's legal? Yeah. Okay, cool. Nothing wrong with that. What about crack cocaine? Yeah, that's legal too. Well, wait a minute. Heroin? Legal. Speed? Legal. Does nobody see what the problem? I mean, weed is cool, but hard drugs, the stuff that can actually kill us, all legal. Yeah, we voted on it. So I can't go to jail because I want to pull a Breaking Bad. No, you're good. And yet, fast forward 4 years later. Oh, well, maybe that was a bad idea. You think? Look, I will say this, guys. I have nothing against weed. I don't smoke it. I don't ingest it. It's not my thing. I understand folks that need it to cope. I understand that there's plenty of medical out. There's medical as well as mechanical, as well as mood stabilizers that we can help with. Not knocking that, because again, it's a lot better than popping Percocets or oxycodone and other hard narcotic drugs they love to push on people. Here's where Oregon messed up. You open the floodgates to everything. And I'm sorry, weed is one thing, but I've never seen someone go, thank God we can actually smoke crack in Oregon now. And that's crazy, because now, homelessness, things of that nature have went up. Well, because we decided to open the floodgates. And now Oregon's rolling it back, because now it's like, oh, we made a terrible error. Yeah, I should have just stuck to weed, because honestly, every state that actually has made weed legal has seen a boom in their stimulus, in their coffers. They actually do have money to spend on roads and education, things of that nature, all because you made weed legal. Making weed legal is completely fine. Deciding to be Breaking Bad and bring back Heisenberg with fentanyl and all this other crap, yeah, that's a big problem. I'm just saying. But with that being said, guys, we do have a few more stories before we get to our feel good segment. I've never thought I'd sit there and say this, guys, because again, this is one of those things to where this needs to be said, and I'm surprised that we have to say it. But affirmative action, the part of affirmative action where for college entrances, where 4 Chinese students decided to sit there and sue Harvard because they weren't getting into Harvard and thought it was because of their racial, because it was racial discrimination, and they come to find out the Supreme Court sat there and said, "Ooh, another reason for us to destroy something," and destroy the college entrance, details of affirmative action, and said they tossed that out, and those 4 Chinese students didn't get to go into Harvard. But now every program with DEI across the board in the nation was removed because companies are like, we can get rid of these people and not get sued. Bet. Well, unfortunately, it's also affected college entrances. Why? Fewer black students are now enrolled at higher colleges. I wonder why.
The schools say they saw it coming.
We have to be open and honest about what's happening.
A noticeable drop in the number of incoming black freshmen at some of the nation's top universities. The first class admitted after last year's decision from the U.S. Supreme Court, sharply limiting the use of race in college admissions. Something Mount Holyoke College President Danielle Hawley says ushered in a sea change.
That demographic information that used to be readily in students' file is now masked. When we get that data now, the data does not have race data attached to it.
It's not even, it's not even there. It's just blank.
That's right. So there's no way for readers to know.
That fundamental shift in admissions now emerging in early data from several elite schools. Today, Yale revealing its share of black students remains steady compared to 2023. But at MIT, black students dropping 10%. And at Amherst, black students dipping by 8%. The primary cause of the dips in enrollment, not easy to pinpoint. Some schools say delays in processing financial aid offers prompted students without means to look elsewhere.
It was a perfect storm.
In the wake of the high court's ruling, some have turned to other ways to reach students of color, relying on more pipeline programs and coordinating with underserved high schools.
It has made our work more difficult. It really has.
The admissions team at Sarah Lawrence College decided to offer an optional essay, giving applicants a chance to respond to the Supreme Court's decision.
There's some remarkable responses in there. We're a liberal arts college. We want our students tackling big real world issues. And this is a big real world issue.
The school now says incoming black students have actually increased from 4 to 6%. Still, the ruling has complicated admissions for top colleges that say they want to diversify an historically white student body. But it's also served as a long-fought victory for those who've argued it was unconstitutional for schools to give any preferential treatment based on race.
Are there some students, faculty, or even peers that say to you, you know, I actually think the Supreme Court got it right?
Oh, absolutely.
There are race-neutral methods.
People like Edward Bloom, the architect behind the original lawsuit accusing Harvard and UNC of giving a boost to black applicants and discriminating against Asian students.
We just don't know what Harvard and UNC and most colleges and universities have done. Until that data is released, we're just going to have to wait and find out.
For Bloom, the work is not done, as he's now focused on what's happening in graduate school admissions and beyond.
Your race and your ethnicity doesn't tell us anything about who you are as an individual.
Now, most schools, Lester, still have not released their data for this year's freshman class, but we do expect to see those figures start to come out in the coming weeks.
A fascinating fall.
Yeah, so let's just kind of be honest here, because we just might as well go and say it. Affirmative action was needed, despite that. And again, it's always, I hate to say it, it's always white people. I know it's not all white people, but it's always certain white people that sit there and say affirmative action just force college universities to accept black people over. They never finish the sentence. They never finish the sentence, because then you're going to show how racist you are. Because let's be honest, guys, historically, we need affirmative action, because without it, how many colleges were accepting black people? Just saying. Before affirmative action, mind you. And I'm not talking about historical black colleges, universities. I'm not talking about HBCUs. I'm talking about other colleges. Before affirmative action, how many actual black people were accepted? Because I can tell you the number is low, almost non-existent, especially in the South. But that's the point I'm getting at, is that with affirmative action, it did force you to consider everybody. It's not just black people. But it's amazing where you sit there and hear people now. It's like, well, your race and your don't determine anything. Really? Says the guy of the white person of the race that's gotten a 400-year head start based on slavery. But you're going to sit there and tell us that that has nothing to do with it. Yet it's amazing. We just saw MIT had a drop. We just saw other colleges have a drop in black students. Why? These colleges are no longer held to a standard of accepting people of color. They're not held to it anymore. They can't be sued for it anymore. That's why not only colleges but corporations that have DEI, diversity and inclusion programs don't have anymore. Don't have said people anymore. Can actually let those people go. Why? So they don't have to worry about getting sued. They don't have to worry about people calling them racist or calling racist people racist company, because they now are shielded. So it's amazing to me where you have idiots like at the end of that video where it's like, oh well, we just need to make it fair. Unfortunately, in our society in America, it won't be fair until people that think that anytime a black person gets an advantage, that it has to be taken away from them. Just like the Fearless Fund. The Fearless Fund that we talked about was a small business fund that was held by black women who only gave to black women who were entrepreneurs. That's what the Fearless Fund was for. And what happened? A white man heard about it, decided to sue and say, that's discrimination. How dare those black women help other black women get ahead? Like I said, call spade a spade, but it's always, and I say it all the time, it is always, whenever black people have a leg up in the situation, it's always seen as, oh, well, they should need that advantage. They shouldn't need that help. Whereas, again, white people have been getting help for so long and are still getting helped. But again, tell me if I'm wrong. The last story I'll get to, guys, is a story that, again, is coming out of Alabama by More Perfect Union. And I swear to you guys, this is the reason why incarceration will still be America's favorite #1 product. Because if you thought the prison system was bad, for the next 10 minutes, understand how bad it is, especially the fact of what Alabama was able to get away with.
Well, a lot of people are calling it modern slavery. Does that feel right?
I was just about to say, that's slavery. That's slavery. You took away the whips, but you put the paperwork. Took away the masters and you put them in uniform. Same difference. Same difference.
It kind of appears that there is a coordinated system in order to protect the labor that's created by the prison system.
Walk into a McDonald's in Alabama, and the worker flipping your McDouble could be an incarcerated person.
It's a sad situation, a way they getting rich off us.
The Alabama Department of Corrections farms out incarcerated people to work at hundreds of private companies and government agencies across the state.
McDonald's, Burger King, Golden Corral, Wendy's. They got a Wendy's contract right now. State Trooper's office.
They'll send everybody everywhere.
They'll send you everywhere. Yes, the parole office.
And even though ADOC trusts these incarcerated people to leave prison every day and work alongside the general public, many of them are still denied the chance at real freedom.
I work for y'all, but when I come up from parole, you deny me. Why would you deny me? Because you're getting free service.
This is a story about corporations and the state of Alabama exploiting prison labor and the coercive policies they use to keep its citizens trapped in servitude.
It doesn't work. It's a terrible system.
If you're wondering how any of this is even legal, well, it might not be. That's what we went to Alabama to figure out. So yeah, could you just describe how long you worked here? And
I was here 18 months. I ran their kitchen by myself from 8 to 5 every Tuesday through Thursday.
Wow, yeah. That sounds like hard work.
It was.
Elizabeth Thomas was in the Alabama Work Release Program for 5 of her 15 years in prison. So they had a combination of incarcerated people and free world people. Yes. Did you feel like there was a difference how they treated?
Oh, most definitely. We work longer hours.
Make the work release work over, work extra days, don't want to give you off days. Like, no, I got to eat my health. I have to get rest. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a machine. But that's how they look at you like.
This is Quincy Sanders. During his nearly 17 years in prison, he worked at several restaurants, a lumber yard, and McDonald's.
Like, working a real job and trying to be incarcerated is a very hard experience. You have to be mind strong, really.
Alabama has one of the most overcrowded and deadly prison systems in the United States. Even the Justice Department found conditions there to be unconstitutional. In 2023, almost a person a day died in Alabama prisons, which is almost 5 times the national average.
They might get beat to death. People beating folks with sticks. They breaking broomsticks, making little billy clubs. People in there stabbing each other. People in there doing drugs. People in there almost about to die. They're not giving you no nursing assistance. The nurse probably get there, you probably be dead.
But ADOC offers people in prison with nonviolent misdemeanor convictions a potentially life-saving deal. If they join the work release program, they get to live in special facilities that are generally much less dangerous than regular prisons. They spend their days working in the free world without prison supervision, and they can earn 72-hour passes to visit their families at home.
If you go out here and you do the right thing, you get to elevate, you get to grow, you get out of this facility. But you know what you didn't tell me is that you finna get all my money. That's what they didn't tell you.
The state takes a 40% cut of every incarcerated worker's wages off the top, before taxes, plus an additional $5 a day for van rides to and from work, $15 a month for laundry, and then any restitution and court fees.
If your check is $636, you might see two something out of that. And that's every 2 weeks. And you done work 80 hours and only seen $200. Like it makes you lose motivation, because you know money motivates people, especially working. So it kind of makes you lose motivation.
One estimate calculated that the state of Alabama enjoys a benefit of more than $450 million a year off of prison labor.
And it's slavery all the way around the board, just slavery.
And unlike free world workers, incarcerated workers can't just get a shift covered or quit.
ADOC has a list of rules that all incarcerated people are expected to abide by. Rules like don't have contraband, be in your bunk at the required time, and rules like don't refuse to work. That's a rule on the books.
CJ Sandley is one of the attorneys behind a recent lawsuit filed against ADOC.
The range of punishments folks can face if they get written up for refusing to work include solitary confinement, losing access to phones, tablets, visitation, access to their families and loved ones for like 30 days, 60 days, being required to do more work inside the prison walls for free under threat of punishment.
I want to talk to my family. I want to be a part of my family. And you're telling me that if I don't go and do what you want me to do at these jobs, work as hard as they want me to do, if they need me 7 days, you want me to go there 7 days. If they need me 80 hours, you want me to work 80 hours. If they want me to turn around and come back and do a double, you want me to get up and you want me to be available to do all this. But if I decide I'm tired, Lord forbid if we got sick.
I talked to Reginald Burrell, who was injured when an entertainment center fell on his head at the private furniture manufacturing company where he worked through ADOC. When he spoke up about it, he was fired.
And, I confronted the JPO about it, and they shipped me to Shieldsburg with extra duty, taking away my privileges, and I ended up in a landfill. I just got assaulted and mistreated at this job, and now I'm ended in a landfill working for free for a multi-million-dollar company.
One of the most valuable things in the system is whatever I can do to get out early. If a work stoppage to protect myself from being abused and to speak up for myself could subject me to sanctions, I don't have to say it, but you're going to follow whatever order you're given.
Chris England is a state representative in Alabama. He's leading the fight to reform the state's prison system.
It is a completely broken system. The folks in charge, the parole board, they don't use guidelines. There is no methodology applied to it.
Alabama has some of the lowest parole grant rates in the country.
And more than 90% of the time, hearing this answer.
Denied, 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 be denied. Parole will be denied.
If the parole board followed its own guidelines, it would grant parole in about 80% of cases. But instead, that number dropped to just 8%, last year. And incarcerated people in the work release program don't fare much better.
I know that there are people at the Department of Corrections, they assess them, and then they say, you are not a threat. So much so, you can leave here and go work. Some people actually go home for 72 hours on a weekend and are told, we trust you to the point where you do whatever you got to do. We'll see you Monday morning, 8 o'clock. That same person goes before the parole board and they say, you know, what you did 20 years ago is so bad we can't let you out. You're a threat to public safety, but make sure you're at work tomorrow morning.
A federal lawsuit claims that 235 people in the work release program were denied parole in fiscal year 2022.
So if the system is operating as designed, what is the point of the system?
It appears labor is.
One thing our lawsuit talks a lot about is that very clear lineage from slavery in the state to convict leasing and to what we've got now. And the punishment by the Department of Corrections is what our clients are challenging, because that's what amounts to involuntary servitude and slavery by the state.
After the Civil War, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery with a key caveat. Forced labor was still allowed for people convicted of a crime, and the states adopted a copycat of this federal amendment. But here's the thing. In 2022, Alabamians made a historic vote to remove this exception.
The state has a new constitution. Voters overwhelmingly agreed to make our state constitution free of racist laws and language.
However, right after the voters of the state changed the state constitution, the governor and the Department of Corrections really doubled down on the punishment for refusing to work.
So the people closed the loophole and then the governor went around to open it up again, basically.
Yeah, that's right.
Governor Kay Ivey's executive order made encouraging or causing a work stoppage a high-level violation on the same level as possession of a weapon, drug possession, and bribery. The order also cracked down on correctional incentive time, better known as
good time.
In some prison systems, good behavior is rewarded with what's known as good time. People can earn sentence reductions and get released from prison early.
And the state legislature even changed its good time law to increase that form of punishment for folks who refuse to work.
We're simply changing the amount of correctional incentive time or good time days that are offered.
Are we increasing or are we lowering it?
We are lowering them.
All of this was done on the heels of this constitutional change, and frankly, it's a brazen ignoring of the will of the voters of the state, and that's what our lawsuit is about. And so many people want to work, but they want to be paid fairly. They want to be paid a free world wage for the labor they're doing. They want to be working in safe conditions. They want to be treated fairly, and they don't want to be forced to work if they don't want to, or they can't because they're sick, or they have a doctor's appointment, or they're feeling unsafe in their work and they want to change jobs.
One of the unique things about this state and really the country is that things just never end, they evolve. If your prison system is full, it's primarily full of Black folks, Black men, and you have a racial disparity in who gets released and who doesn't. Can you imagine the optics of what that labor force looks like?
Black people account for just over a quarter of Alabama's total population, but more than 50% of the prison population. An AL.com investigation found that Black men were 25% less likely to get parole than white men.
If you could take a picture of a group of men who are working convict labor decades ago and juxtapose that next to a current labor force, it would probably look the same. That's crazy.
So, what is the point of prison? Is it the creation of a cheap, controllable, and confined labor source? Or is it rehabilitation? And what does a real commitment to rehabilitation for incarcerated people actually look like?
I wish they'd strip that name off of that Alabama Department of Correction. I wish they'll take correction out of that and just say Alabama Department, because ain't no correction. Ain't no correction, ain't no structure, ain't no discipline. You discipline me to do what you want me to do, not the law. Not to come back in society and be able to live off of what you taught me. That's not what's going on. If I lived off what DOC taught me, I'd still be a criminal. Because they want that paycheck. They want me to come back in tomorrow. They want me to. Because they money keep flowing. It's no correction. We need to start correcting. We need to start loving. We need to start teaching.
And, you know, what more can be said from that? And that's Alabama. I can go on to Tennessee. Tennessee, like I said before, when it comes to the U.S., the number one export that we have is the number of people incarcerated. Even more so that, yes, these very same prisons, usually most of them are owned by corporations, get cheap labor because, hey, you can sit there and say, hey, I have a whole bunch of workers that I will pay them 25 cents an hour, and they'll do the job that you need them to do. They can undercut any bid out there. Why? Because they have the most people. And as we saw from there, you know, Alabama just it's not for rehabbing. And I said before, prison is not for rehabbing. Prison is not for that. What prison is it is modified slavery. It is. If you think about it. Oh, we'll put you to work, but you won't get early parole. We'll take 40% of your net pay, even though you might be making a minimum wage as it is. But it's amazing to me that just because these prisons, and I'm just going to be honest with you, prisons should not be able to do that. I think prisons should be more for rehabilitation for those that are able to go back to society. But I also think that, you know, you can't treat them like cattle. You can't treat them like animals. You can't treat them like animals, because guess what? If you treat them like animals, how do you expect them to act? And like I said, it's prison, and I get it. But also CCCA, which is actually the prison, which actually is a corporation that owns prisons, like especially here in Nashville, are notorious for that. So imagine you are in prison. You are trying to make your life better. You're trying to take on these work relief programs. And this is the type of stuff they do to you. I'm sorry, it's just something you just can't shake off. And yes, something should be done about this. I will fully agree with that. And hopefully less stories like that woman they just showed become less of a memory. But this goes to show you why we need to be active, why people need to be involved with things that are going on in their cities and their states, because that's just Alabama. You don't want me to go into Tennessee. I'm pretty sure they can do a whole lot worse. But that being said, guys, we're going to move on to our feel good segment, because usually on How the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of things, a lot of doom and gloom, things to make you lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it's Hump Day Wednesday. Tomorrow is Friday, which is Thursday, and we will leave you guys out with some good vibrations. And hopefully, this young man understand that he is getting a new heart that he's been waiting for so long. Will do just that.
What? Oh my God. So you're not matching the vibe today? You're not matching the vibe? You're not matching the vibe, John Henry? Congratulations. Woohoo. Hey. Again, a new heart. No! Yes. You still want to go on an ice cream date? Yeah. All right. I'll give you the new heart. Yay, that's wonderful. Good to see you. You gotta tell her. I'll give you the new heart.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you for everything.
I don't care who you are. That's feel good right there. And happy that successful surgery and that the young man was able to go home. So if you are a donor, always donate, because I know I'm definitely a donor in case, somebody wants to use anything for me. I'm not spring chicken anymore, but hey, you never know who you can help. Donating your body or donating the organs. Trust me, you don't know who you would help, and it will help them quite tremendously. Almost I kind of teared up a little bit because, me being a parent now, kids get excited. I can't help but want to sit there and, have allergies. But anyway, you don't want to see grown men cry. That being said, we are going to go ahead and wrap it up, guys. Thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate it. Some shameless plugging before we do get out of here. Shout out to BlurStation.com. Again, I will keep bringing this up because we see what happens when Black viewership in our content. We are network kingmakers is what we are. But we always find ourselves making other people kings and titans, and we can do it ourselves. Blur Station is the area that we can do that in. Again, definitely check it out. It's $10.99 a month. If you do want to join, please the Join Now button that you can see right here. Please select the Blurred's Eye View Affinity membership, and of course, my name, Black Spartan. I would certainly appreciate that if you do. Again, guys, it is $10.99 a month to actually view Blur Station. $10.99 a month. You cannot beat that with a stick. After 36 months, guys, you do get the ability to own a piece of Blur Station. A lot easier to own a media conglomerate than going through Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, or those type of things. Again, this is the vehicle, the table that we asked for. So definitely check out BlurStation.com. As for myself, guys, Black_Spartan615 on socials where you usually can find me. Please like, please share, please follow. A like, a share, and a follow costs nothing but means everything. And also, I'm a pretty chatty person. Just don't make it weird. I don't want to block you. I just keep things simple and smooth. I do talk about other things more than current events. So again, I'm friendly. Just keep it nice. That's all I ask. At the same time, guys, links at the bottom. I'll make that link a little bit bigger for you guys to see. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, taking me on a link page that has the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of our podcasts. Like, share, and follow. Subscribe, because again, we simply cannot do this without you. And also, guys, for all those, and I'm going to keep bringing this up because, yes, we are in a election period. We are now less than, I'm a little bit off, 61 days. Yes, we are 61 days from the election now. And again, I'm going to keep stressing this because it is your diligence to vote. Not just because, yes, because of the fact that people have fought and died for your ability to vote. But at the same time, we cannot ignore Trump. We can't. We do not need a second act. And at this time, guys, the Republicans, the GOP, are moving the goalposts. They are purging voter polls. They are taking away mail by voting, or at least trying to. They're trying to redo districts. What I'm basically saying, guys, is don't assume a goddamn thing. You can go to voting sites like vote.org. And again, I say vote.org because vote.org will help you out completely. It will check your voter registration. It will, if you did not vote, it will help you to register to vote. You see if you are eligible to vote by mail. You can find out where you're supposed to go for voting. In early voting, you can certainly do that as well. Please, guys, I cannot stress this enough. Vote.org is a site that will help you out tremendously if you're unsure about what to do, unsure where to go, or just flat out need to make sure that you're set. Because trust me, you do not want to wait until November 5th to get things going. I am just saying, guys, you can early vote. Voting.org can actually help you out with early voting in your state, in your city, and be able to tell you where to go. But I cannot stress this enough. Please be prepared and help others to be prepared. We all need to turn out and show up. And again, I keep on saying not to be biased, but let's be honest. As much as I keep on saying Dorito doesn't need to be president, it is high time a woman is president. It's high time we can finally say Madam President. High time. Beyond time, actually. But yes, vote.org is a site that actually help you out with your voting needs. Please, guys, spread the word. Get people on board because we're going to need every vote counts. Don't believe me? Look at Georgia last man's special election. Every vote counts. That also being said, guys, there are also other sites out there that can actually help you if you do want to run for office in your city or in your state. You can definitely do that and be a public servant and hopefully make a difference. But again, guys, be informed, be aware, be vigilant, because the next 61 days is going to be interesting. But that being said, guys, last thing I'll say about how the Frack We Got here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information that is possible to give you, but we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do better as a society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right our wrongs by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, and hopefully very soon, 61 days from now, electing our first Black woman to be Madam President. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does everything go up but our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the frack we got here? Again, guys, let's get down to crunch time. Be aware, be active. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I promise we'll get through this. Peace.